Welcome back, Smile Jammers. Well, believe it or not, gambling and gambling disorder is increasingly becoming more of a problem, especially with the current COVID climate. And it's affecting just about everyone, including children. Zooming in this morning is Richard Henry. He's Program Manager, Addiction Counseling and Support Services for Rise Life Management Services. And he's going to be talking to us about this issue and how we can assist those who are struggling with it. Good morning, Richard. Welcome to Smile Jamaica.
Hey, Richard, well on.
Hi, good morning, guys. How are you?
We're good, thanks.
Well, I read recently where I think there were two young men gambling, and one got killed. I think it was a $10 bet, and they wanted to raise it to $50 and stuff like that. This is something that we're talking about here, don't?
Yeah, most certainly. And it's a very unfortunate unfortunate event. We were, however, the school reached out to us. I mean, it happened in a community, but the school of the young man reached out to Rise, and we were able to deploy a person that we call our UGPO, which is an underage gambling prevention officer, to be able to go into that school and have as many sensitization sessions underage gambling with the students. I think we were able to get to 301 students, and they've invited us back to speak with the parents as well about the issue of underage gambling.
Yep. You say underage gambling as if to suggest, well, I'm not saying you're suggesting anything, but is that specifically what we're talking about, or gambling overall?
Well, I mean, at Rise, we segment how we, in our approach. We have a specific part of the program that deals with underage gambling. And then we also have a segment that deals with gambling with adults in particular. I mean, why it's important is that we believe that if we do enough good prevention work with underage gambling, that we will have less adults who have gambling-related issues in the future. The earlier the onset of gambling is the increased likelihood that you will take that gambling behavior and activity into adulthood.
Yeah. There's an article, and even what we said a while ago, Richard, in terms of an increase because of COVID-19. Is the gambling mostly driven by the idea of I'm going to win something, I'm going to get money, or I'm going to be able to better myself? Or is it just the high from the activity?
Excellent question. It's a mixture. Of course, there is a feeling that you get from gambling, and all persons who have a gambling disorder or some sort of addiction to gambling would derive some benefit emotionally from it. However, the factor of wanting money, and especially for adolescents, especially as far as underage gambling is concerned, because young people don't readily have access to cash and money, and they see things and they want it. And so for some, they believe that if they go gambling, they can get some of this money that maybe their parents don't have to give them. Apart from that, adolescent years are, rife with impulsivity and thrill-seeking, and that's part of the two of the factors that also drive the behavior among adolescents.
Yeah. The story that we were talking about had a couple of young men, and it was dice.
Yes.
Are we talking about anything specific to do with gambling here, or is horse racing and is whatever it is that you can gamble? Are we talking about anything specific here?
I like the fact that you said anything that you can gamble, because that's what we have discovered through our work, especially with school-based youth, that we had to create a program based on a study that we did, the Jamaica Child and Adolescent Gambling Survey. It was done in 2005, but the data is still very relevant, that a lot of young people did not understand the definition of gambling, and that it had nothing just to do with money, but anything of value that you can use to gamble. With that said, we had to incorporate that in our prevention work, in our education work with young people, to get them to have a greater understanding of what it is exactly they're getting into and what the consequences are of underage gambling.
Yeah. I was talking to someone about addiction this week, Richard, and I said one of the challenges is How do you identify when it becomes an addiction and not just a habit? I'm separating the two ideas. How do we identify in our children that, okay, this is not just them passing time, this really is a gambling or gaming addiction?
All right. Like all addictions, it'll begin to have an impact on the individual's school life, if they're working, their work life, social life. You'll find that they'll change friends. They'll have mostly friends who are involved in the whatever activity the addiction takes, whether it's gambling or using some kind of substance as well. However, for young people, there are some things that you can also look for, like, having large sums of money that the parents know nothing about, that the parents would not have given to the young person. Preoccupation with the whole idea of gambling, maybe watching a lot more sports. Not to say that young people watching sports means that they are having a gambling related issue.
Yeah.
But finding paraphernalia around the place, never mentioned dice. So if parents are finding, the dice around the place, if they're finding card decks around the place, and very important because of the era that we live in, young people can get on their phone and get into gambling type games. And so parents have to be very aware of the sites that their children are going on and what it is exactly. So you have to become inquisitive, what it is exactly that they're doing on their phone. Further to that, the school can also pick up that a youngster who was doing very well, all of a sudden his grades are beginning to fall. May not necessarily just be gambling, but it is worth an investigation and that sort of thing. Secrecy. And I think one thing that's very important, if you notice stealing around the house, to be able to get money, to be able to go and bet. And so those are just a few of the things that you can actually look for. In terms of when it gets to be an addiction, it's a little bit different in young people than it is in adults. It takes a little longer for young people to actually develop an addiction to it. And that is why we have the opportunity to be able to short circuit the issue if we pick up on some of the signs and symptoms that I just explained. And so parents and the community at large need to be very vigilant, because the gambling isn't going to take place in isolation. The gambling is going to take place, maybe not in front of family members, but it's going to take place in the community where other people are going to see it. Is the community going to share what they're seeing or speak to the young people that are being involved in that type of activity? Or do they just walk by and allow it to happen?
Yeah. From what you're hearing, from what you know, how widespread is it? How prevalent is all of this?
Neville, if I said very widespread, I'd be, it's already an anecdotal reference. What we want to do really is another study on gambling among adolescents. It's the only study that we have on gambling in Jamaica. However, we are currently doing an adult study on gambling in Jamaica, first of its kind, first in the English-speaking Caribbean. And if I might say, please, the program that we have is funded by the Betting, Gaming and Lotteries Commission and has been for the past 16 years since inception.
Wow.
Okay.
And so it's very important. We have no program without the BGLC, so we thank them. But we do need a study on the current levels of gambling-related disorders or problems among adolescents. Now, back then, Neville, in 2007, it stated, our data stated that 1 in 5 adolescents were deemed to have a gambling-related issue. And that, just from an international perspective, is very high. It would be interesting to know what it is now, seeing that we have increased the opportunities, not for adolescents to gamble, but for the society in general. And so young people are seeing a lot more advertisements. We live in an era of the most legalized and socially acceptable gambling in Jamaica's history. And so it's not business as usual for young people in terms of negotiating adverts that they're hearing and seeing, etc. We have to give them the skills to be able to negotiate this in terms of decision-making, risk-taking, and that sort of thing.
Boy, it's a big job that you guys have.
Yeah.
Is it a regular thing that you go into schools and talk about all these things? Because I know it's not just gambling you guys deal with. I mean, it's drugs and all kinds of different stuff. So do you have a regular
Oh,
thing
yes.
that you go into high schools and have a chat with everyone, and how is that accepted?
Oh, we do extremely well. What we need and what we're hoping for in the future is for the BGLC to help us to expand the program. But the program is specific to gambling and broken down specific to underage gambling. I was mentioning that we have someone that we call an OGPO, which is an underage gambling prevention officer. And we have dispatched him into schools, and we don't have enough of him to be able to go to all the schools that require our services. We are currently negotiating an MOU with the Ministry of Education, and we've had one before from 2009 to 14, and we're hoping that we'll have another one that enables RISE to do a lot more training with guidance counselors, because we can't do it on our own, guys.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so we recognize that we need to train guidance counselors to have the skills to intervene as well, to do prevention work as well, and to do treatment with young persons who develop gambling problems.
Yeah. I'm going to use the word treatment, Richard, because how important is it for parents and for the support systems at school to recognize that this is a serious problem and not something that is not just a picnic being bad. It's not just a teenager being able to tomorrow say, I'm going to stop doing it. But that it takes time and it takes treatment for that to happen.
Most definitely. And sometimes we find in schools that there is a difficulty between being rehabilitative and being punitive. And so what we believe is that no one way works, and that if you merge the rehabilitative with the punitive, you'll get the right solution. Because certainly adolescents need to know that there are consequences for particular behaviors, but at the same time, they also need assistance and help to be able to overcome these behaviors. Treatment certainly is very, very important, especially in light of the fact that, I said before, the earlier the onset of your gambling activity increases the likelihood that you'll make it into adulthood, which increases the likelihood that you'll develop a gambling-related issue as an adult.
Yeah. Stay safe, my friend. Good to see you. God bless.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, man. Richard Henry, Program Manager, Addiction Counseling and Support Services, RISE Life Management Services.
All right. Up next, the U.S. honors our frontline workers. We'll give